Welcome to MMA Fancast. My name's Luke, and I'm joined by a friend of the show, the champion of 247 Fighting Championships, Cam, the Mole Rat Allgeier. Cam, welcome to the show, champ.
Yeah, thanks for having me on again.
It's nice having you on. I really enjoy kind of following your career. It's been a good one. You won the 247 Fighting Championships belt against Justin Patton, which was a great fight, and then you defended it. We have talked since then, which was great, but you defended it against Asher Frederick, who was undefeated at the time, 5-0. You were 5-0. You are now set to defend it. You're 6-0, and you're set to defend it against a challenger who is also 6-0. So it's going to be the second time in a row that you're undefeated, facing an undefeated challenger as well. What have you learned from your first successful title defense? Does that kind of set this fight up better, or do you just look at it as what you've learned from any fight?
I think what I learned from the first title defense is just fight, like same thing whenever I won it against Patton. It was like, you can't put the pressure on yourself like, oh man, I'm fighting for a belt. I kind of think Asher did that to himself the last fight. He was in the back. He was, people kept coming up to me like, yeah, he's doing like sprints up and down. He's like doing like yoga and yelling. I'm like, yeah, he's going to wear himself out before the fight starts. Like it's just any other day. So I think that's the biggest thing to keep in mind. Like it's nice after, but before, during the fight, you can't think about it.
Well, that is that's a very mature, and I wish the best for Asher. He was a great competitor, great record coming in, shows really your skill level to take a guy who 5-0 was just, on a tear. I just actually looked him up. He has not fought since, and I'm hoping he's able to fight since and get back on the winning ways. But it really does show your ability to recognize that don't let the moment become too big for you. Whether it's a championship fight, whether it's when you turn pro, that's a big one too, right? We've seen that happen where you turn pro. I think we even might have seen that with Justin Patton, one of your previous opponents, who is a good fighter, and the pro debut did not go his way. It's hard. It's hard when you put too much pressure.
I mean, it happens to people, like the Patton. I feel like this fight that he has now actually is going to be a good one for him to bounce back from. So I hope he does well for that. But I think anytime you have pressure on yourself, like that's whenever you start to make bad decisions. That's whenever you start to fatigue. Like you just I go into every fight like, okay, I spar every single, week, almost every single day at practice. What's the difference? Today I'm doing it in front of a couple more people. So that's how I try to look at every fight.
Yeah, that's a very mature way of looking at the fights, because you're doing what you want to do. It's still it's got to still be a sport you enjoy and something that you like to do. There's been a couple guys at the highest level at the UFC that kind of talk about needing to keep that attitude of wanting to do it, loving it, enjoying it, because when it starts to have more dollars, figures attached to it, it can start to not feel that way. So you're definitely learning it very well now. How has it been for you? The Asher win came, the 247 had a lot of fights this summer. It was great once COVID let up. They had a doubleheader card in May, and you were on the second. I believe you were on the second of the doubleheader card. You were on the first of the doubleheader card in May, which was fantastic. And then they had two shows in August, and you were on the first of those two shows against Asher. And now here it is in February. Has that, I won't call it a break, but is that time between August and February, do you see that being as valuable for you?
I think it was just nice time to have a break. Like I think I've been fighting for 2 years roughly, but It was like 2 fights, and then the shutdown happened, and then I got the rest of the fights in. So I fought a lot in a short period of time. Mm-hmm. And it's just, I'd get out of one camp, I would get fat, like just enough time to get fat, and then boom, back into another camp, cut back down, So it was nice just to relax, like I don't have to be grinding 100% every single time I go into the gym. I can work on new stuff. So it was a good break. It was good to, you know, take a little bit of time, not preparing for a fight, work on the skills, and just kind of have fun in the gym more than, you know, be ready for a fight.
Yeah, I looked at your chart. You've had 3 fights in 2021, and of course, your title defense is early 2022, given the fact that it's February 5th. If I haven't mentioned it, it's Brawl in the Burgh 10 at the Monroeville Convention Center for 247 Fighting Championships, which obviously you're defending it. You're the defending champion, and you've already defended it once. I asked this question to Ethan Goss, who obviously trains out of your gym. But I asked him if you could do it as well, to kind of break down how you connect your 2 main coaches, Coach Ross and Coach Cassidy. And there's probably some other ones, so feel free to mention anybody. But as far as Coach Ross and Coach Cassidy goes at Gorilla House, how are they for you? How has training been? How has your development been as far as that relationship with coaches? Because obviously that's a big deal. You've been with them since before your first fight.
Yeah. I mean, they're good coaches. I think their style of coaching, I think it's something that really like speaks to, I think, both me and Ethan. Just that we grew up that wrestling, that, you know, like the coaches are always, you know, they're hard on you. They want a grinding workout. And that's how Ray likes to run his grappling practices. Like if we're taking too long in between reps in the drill, you know, he's over there, let's talk more work. Come on, let's get going. Calling us names and whatnot. So, you know, it's something that just, if you have the connection with the coach, I think that helps a lot, because you can have a world-class athlete trying to teach you something, but if you don't have that connection, if you don't have that, you know, similar language, like how whatever they're teaching, if that's not how you're understanding, it doesn't matter how good they are, you're never going to learn anything. I think I got lucky with Ray and Darren, that not only are they good at communicating to me in a way that I understand, but also they relay with each other. Because that's another thing I'll see going to some gyms is you'll have your striking coach teaching one thing, your grappling coach teaching another, and there's not that bridge in the middle. So, you know, if you got let's say you got a striking coach who's real slick on the outside, he wants to counter and, you know, keep distance, and then you have your grappling coach who wants a pressure heavy game so you can get him to the fence. Like, you're never going to be good at either, because you never have that cohesiveness. So I think them being able to work off what each other want to do, it really helps out.
Yeah, that's again very wise. For people that don't know gyms, it's kind of like how if people follow football, they can picture it better. How sometimes at the highest football level in the NFL, it's obvious that a head coach isn't getting along with the offensive coordinator or the defensive coordinator, and then it creates problems. And it's kind of the same thing. You know, when I was running a gym in Philly, I was really blessed to have a great jiu-jitsu coach who we connected very well. I was more the striking, he was more the jiu-jitsu. We did all of it, but it's good to have that feedback where both coaches work together and also understand that it's not an insult. I think one of the challenges, your coaches are great. One of the challenges some coaches have is they coach for a gym, but they want their fighters to win their style. That way they look better, right? This is sort of, I'm not trying to throw shade at Bang Ludwig, because he's obviously an incredible coach, but that's kind of what happened at Team Alpha Male. You had Bang wanting these grapple heavy alpha males to show off his slick Muay Thai, because he wanted his Muay Thai to become famous, and hats off to him. It's a great style. But I think when I was coaching, I was more kickboxing, and our people would win by jiu-jitsu. Great. I want wins, right? Part of being a coach. And I think what the coaches do, you were saying, out of Gorilla House, is it's a team win, right? The team wins when you win, whether it's this style or that style, whether it's a grappling heavy. Talk a little bit about, we've talked about this before, but you're a grapple heavy approach, but now you've become much more well-rounded. And against Asher, you were really smooth, and against Justin actually too, you're really smooth at the striking into grappling. Which coaches kind of gear that up? Is that the striking coach setting you up for the grappling, or is that the grappling coach setting you up for the grappling? Because I know that's the blend, and you're doing the blend very well.
I would say it's a little bit of both. So I think another reason why Ray and Darren are so good at like collaborating as coaches is because they're not from a strict background. Like Ray
Mm,
is he judo, Japanese jiu-jitsu, like that's his background, but he also did boxing, he also did Muay Thai. So he knows the striking
right.
aspect, to be able to do that. And Darren, he world class striker back in his day.
Mm,
Also, really good wrestler as well. So he understands like, okay, well, if I want to grab your legs, like this is what I have to do. So the transition is something that both of them, are like, oh, why don't you try that? Why don't you try this? Hey, I see it from, and they got their own different perspective, so it helps to blend it together. Different stuff that each of them see, but it's something that every single practice I'm working on that transition, whether it's the striking practice, going, oh yeah, try this combination to get into the grappling
mm,
practice where it's like, okay, well, you can't get an inside tie and get a
mm.
pull to a double because you're never gonna grab somebody, you're gonna get punched in the face. So if you're gonna take a shot, you have to punch your way into it.
Mhm. Yeah, you're really, for anybody that's in the area of Gorilla House Gym, listen to what the champ's saying, right? This is the type of, and I know they have strength and conditioning as well. It's a full gym. It's not just MMA. So hats off to them, but that's what you want to hear because it's easy, particularly from a wrestling background. And I've seen this. DC was famous for this, even at his height. He would still do strict wrestling practice where they're in this position. You can't fight there. You just can't,
Yeah.
And I think obviously it worked for him. He's an incredible champion, but I think there's something to be said for embracing MMA. And it sounds like your coaches embrace MMA, have a wrestling background, but teach wrestling to work in MMA versus wrestling to work on a wrestling mat, but that challenge that struggles in MMA.
Yeah, I think whenever you do like specific practices, I think that that's fine to do, but you have
Yeah.
to understand what specifically you're working
Mm,
on for that. So like if you do like a straight boxing practice, you have to
mm,
understand you cannot stand in a super bladed, super low stance, real wide. You can't do that. But if you're like, oh, look at these angles I have.
mm.
Oh, let me drop down to the body here and there. Like that's something that you can take with you.
Yep.
And same with a wrestling practice. Like if I'm in a bent over stance, it's more like let me get that chain wrestling. Like if somebody
Sure.
defends that first shot, chain to the second, chain to the third, that explosion. I think people get messed up doing that whenever they get too caught up in like, oh, let me set stuff up off a Russian tie. It's like, okay, well, you're never going to get a Russian tie in MMA. Like if that's what you're focusing on is your setups in a wrestling practice for MMA, like you're kind of wasting your time. But if you're focusing on, that second, third level attack, or like with boxing, like if you're focusing on like how do I step off on an angle to set up my power shot, like that's more applicable to MMA. And I think that's where people get messed up whenever they go to specific practices. They don't see the bigger picture. It's like jujitsu. If you go to a jujitsu practice for MMA and you're
Sure.
trying to do a berimbolo, you're
Yeah.
never going to do it.
Yeah. And there's so much to learn from jujitsu. There's also times where to get a black belt in jujitsu, which is legendary and fantastic, and I encourage anybody who wants that, you've become very good at jujitsu in the confines of what jujitsu allows. That doesn't mean that it's actually helped. I remember when I think it was Benson Henderson's first fight in the UFC after he earned his black belt. He had his black belt on his fight trunks. He got submitted, right? Because
Yeah.
sometimes, because it was kind of funny, but I think it was a Diaz that submitted him. But it was one of those things where it's great to get to the top, but MMA is about getting better at all things, not just one thing. So if you're really good in one spot, you have to be good at all things, which is pretty great.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I think who was it? There was somebody recently. They were came in. Their thing was that they were a jujitsu guy. I can't think of who it was, but
Ryan Hall, the guy that jumps down at the feet, Ryan Hall.
oh yeah, he's good. Not him. It was he wasn't that high level, but this might have been a couple months ago. But I remember their thing was they're a jujitsu guy, and then they came in and they get submitted. And Ray was telling me about this today. He said that he's watching an interview with Jacare.
Hmm.
He's like, I don't think you're going to see as many guys going into MMA from the jiu-jitsu world because if you get submitted as a jiu-jitsu guy doing MMA, it really doesn't say a lot about your jiu-jitsu because you could get rocked on the feet, dropped, and then you got choked. But now people are like, oh man, your jiu-jitsu sucks, but your pure jiu-jitsu is great. And now you can't do the seminars, you can't do this, you can't do that. And, you know, you get beat up for a living instead of, you know, rolling around here and there and traveling the world doing seminars, making a bunch of money.
Well, and maybe that's where the wrestling mindset comes in a little bit more, because wrestlers tend to have that drive of wanting to grind and wanting to kind of be the toughest, sort of most intense person, which I think can go along, even if you pick up losses at times, which some of the best wrestlers have, they might have a different mindset. But yeah, and good on them. You know, the jiu-jitsu world is much more that slick, beautiful using. I mean, I've watched jiu-jitsu seminars on an hour on just how to, and it's great. Okay, great. Those drags are great. The grips are great. But that might be one of the reasons why a pure jiu-jitsu guy might not be as good in practical rock'em sock'em MMA, because he spent so much time working on grips on sleeves, and it's like that's never going to happen in MMA, you know.
Yeah,
so
I think that's the reason why like the two like styles of wrestling that you see in MMA too is the American wrestler, and right now that Dagestani wrestling.
Yeah,
is because wrestling's, even the other countries where it's big in, like Iran and stuff like that, it's not the same like grind. Like ever since, I think it was like after John Smith and on in America, like it became about pushing the pace, attack, score, and that's kind of how the specifically that Dagestan area Russia is. Whereas like other countries, it's a lot more flowy. It's more like a judo or a jiu-jitsu in their training. It's not that, you know, put up the points. But like that mindset of always attacking, it's great for fighting, because in fighting you can't catch a break. Like you catch a break in any other sport, like wrestling. I definitely know I could, if I have an underhook and I don't want to do anything, I can make it look like I'm doing something and I can get that rest, you know. Or in jiu-jitsu, if I, you know, oh man, I'm really close to this submission, I'm not. I'm just holding on to catch my breath. Where, you know, fighting, you can't do that. You're getting pushed.
Well, and in many cases, you're the one doing the pushing. You know, that really is a fantastic style that you have. And you're not just pushing it in just the grinding of wrestling. It's also the striking. If you could, because it was so cool, you did a triangle choke on Asher, and I hadn't seen you throw up legs and be active with your legs, because obviously you're usually in a top control, side control mount, side mount type stuff. What was it like to be able, because you weren't necessarily laying on your back waiting, you kind of used that, you kind of attacked with it. You were in sort of a scramble and you kind of went into it on purpose for that. What was it like to be aggressive? So many of the triangles are thrown up more desperation. You did it as an aggressive move.
Yeah, I mean, it was, whenever I was doing that, my thought process was, you could feel like whenever they're tight, clamping down, or whenever they're loose. And he was loose in the sense of like welling his arms back and forth. So I could feel, I was like, I think I could get it. It just depends on how quick his reaction is. But he was really tight, and like his elbows being down on my hips. So I hear Ray going like, stand up. And I'm thinking to myself, I was like, man, this fight just started. I really don't want to work that hard yet. Let's see. I feel like this triangle is here. Let me give a little bit of bump. Let me see if I can get up. If not, let me see if I can throw this up. And I start trying to scoop my hips out, and I just feel them clamp down. I was like, I can definitely get up, but man, is that going to suck? Like that's a lot of work. So I could feel whenever he was raising up the punch, how much space he was giving, because how I was holding. I was waiting, I timed it, and I was able to throw it up like as he was reaching up the punch. So, I mean, it was a nice way to get it. It's a lot better than him being fully postured up and praying that he fell into it.
Yeah, it really was great timing. And I'm looking at when you finished him, because you finished him in the last 30 seconds of the first round. It also gave, if it didn't work, you were still in a position to be able to, make it to the end of the round. We see that too, because in jiu-jitsu, sometimes people put up submission attempts that put them in bad positions because they're not getting punched They don't worry
Yeah.
about it. They know, oh, okay, I'll just hold on. But like, you can't do that. There's times that I remember in amateur MMA, it was the night Dana White was at the 2300 arena. And that's actually the night he found Mickey Gall. It was that night. He found Mickey Gall. Anyhow, on the amateur card, you had a guy submitted because he turned his back on his opponent. Well, yeah, you might be able to do that. You might be able to do that in jiu-jitsu, but in MMA, you're going to get punched. You're going to get rocked. You can't do that. Now there's some judo throws and stuff that do that, but even then, you saw Rhonda get in trouble sometimes at the higher level where she would kind of fall with girls, and towards the end, they started being able to reverse and stuff. So it is always very interesting. You're on a absolutely packed card. Brawl in Burgh 10. It's got pros that are incredible. Kama Worthy's coming back from the UFC. Just incredible. Obviously, your boy, Ethan, is fighting for his second bout attempt, but he's looking incredible. His fight is a big one. What are you looking forward to February 5th the most for you?
That's tough because there's a lot going on that card. There's so many people from the gym fighting, and like, you know, obviously I want to win my fight, but at a certain point it's like I don't know, like Christmas. You know, you like seeing the kids get the gifts more than, you know, you care about what you get yourself, and you know, like seeing, like, you know, Ethan, who's worked so hard for so long, finally, you know, get a pro title belt, or you know, seeing, you know, I think Sid's on this card, isn't she?
It hasn't been announced. If she's on the card, that is not announced yet, I don't think. If it is, wonderful.
I haven't heard either. I was asking you for clarification.
No, I don't think it's been announced. You're referring to Sydney Ross, and she was the headline. Wasn't that fantastic when she headlined the all amateur card in October?
Yeah.
What a great opportunity for her. It was incredible. It hasn't been announced yet, so I don't think it's official if something's in the works.
Yeah. But you know, like there's other people who are talking to be on the card, but it's like you see all them working so hard every single time, and it's, you know, like it's hard not to be just as excited, if not more excited for them than it is for whatever I'm doing.
Well, you're a great teammate. On that note, what was your thoughts on big man Dan Albright getting a great win for the gym, and also a guy who had a 1-3 record, you know, wasn't doing that well, started training with you guys. The coaches really trained him up well. He goes in there against a guy with a lot of hype and a lot of skill, and really looked incredible in a close fight, but did better as the fight went on. What was it like to kind of see that go for Dan?
I never get to watch the fights live because if there's two people fighting on the card, I'm always the one. They're like, oh, well, you stay back, make sure they're good. It's like, oh, okay. So It was great just seeing Dan come back. Dan's he got a lot of personality. So like whenever he's done with the fight, he's coming back. He's all hyped up. You know, he's ready for his White Claws. It's great to see, and it's like, oh, you know, like. He's just another guy. He's just a really good guy. You know, like he coaches youth wrestling in his free time. You know, he'll bring his kids to the gym with him. Like he's just always, you know, he's always in positive mood. So just seeing anything good happen to him is great. And even that fight that he lost at first, you know, it's like that was such a close fight. You know, like it kind of at the same point, it's like, oh man, that sucks so much. Like seeing him disappointed. You're like, no man, but you did really good. You haven't fought in years. Like you fought a stud in college wrestling. Like, you know, like that's something to be proud of, not, you know, beat yourself up about. And it was just seeing him get that win the next one that made it even better.
Well, and that shows the quality of the gym, you know, because it's not about the guys necessarily like Dan. He didn't have a great record, but he's a great guy, trains really hard, and his skill is gonna improve as he gets around, you know. So that's why I think Gorilla House, obviously the Mat Factory, the Academy, we're surrounded by some really great gyms, and they all do a good job of recognizing that sometimes your best fighters don't necessarily have the best records. It just depends. Obviously, you're a great example of somebody with a great record. Well, I appreciate you. I encourage everybody to get tickets from the Gorilla House gym or from a fighter specifically like the Champ Cam. That way it supports them and helps them out. Can't wait for February 5th. It's going to be an incredible night. Get your tickets, Brawl in Burgh 10. Champ, an early Happy New Year's to you, buddy. Thanks for taking time out to come on the show.
Thank you.
Okay, have a good one.
Holidays.
All right.